I have a little more of the perspective of how we started in 2005 to this arena opening up this last season, and all the history and the failures that we went to through 750 seat arena. It's a beautiful facility. That said, it's a $10 million project. 2005 when we had it bid out, it was $2,096,000.
I'll take 3.
Yep. So, in all of that, we can tell you, I suspect these gentlemen as well can tell you how many different avenues we went down. Cities, school districts. Because unfortunately in St. Michael, we got one, I keep pointing over there because one of the gentlemen over there is from St. Michael. The STMA Arena is a little bit unique in that it's owned by the city of St. Michael, in Albertville, owned by the city of Albertville as well. But most of the kids come from St. Michael. And the third-headed monster to that, it owns it's a 3-headed ownership, is the school district. So when you're all dealing with one city or one school district, remember, try dealing with 3. And that was part of the problem.
It's pretty frustrating.
Yes. So.
Oh, I think that really sets it up. And really, these guys touched on it a little bit, but you know, one of the things that makes us, we talk about being the state of hockey, and being a community-based model, and we're able to do that largely because these school districts and cities and counties are putting up money for our facilities, okay? And it's extremely unique, but it does present challenges, right? There are definitely some difficulties. I don't know that there isn't anybody up here. Jim, how long did it take your project to come to fruition?
It was over 5 years.
Over 5 years. So 5 years was the absolute minimum. Several of these guys are over 10 years, right? So the projects take a lot of time. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of parties to deal with, but it's worth it, okay? Because the benefits we get are significant when it comes to the players and the cost to participate and the number of kids that have the opportunity to play, okay? You look at this. So, Dale, you said private group, but is it like an arena board, right? Arena board.
Arena board. It's a separate nonprofit corporation.
Separate nonprofit, but for the purpose. Okay, so yeah, so I went through this is 2017 Miami study, rink survey, and you go through this, and out of like almost 200 arenas and 250 plus ice sheets, 7 sheets of ice were truly owned by a private entity that didn't have some connection to a government or the arena or the community. Besides that, everything else is like, we're here for youth hockey or high school hockey and that sort of deal, okay? That's extremely unique and extremely special. Now on the flip side of that, the challenge is a lot of this started many, many years ago. The median age of these arenas and when they were built, anyone want to guess what that is? Out of 190 arenas, the median age. Anybody got it? Huh?
30
years? Yeah, 1980 is the median, is when they were built. On median, right? So that's right in the middle of those, okay? So it's almost 40 years old, okay? So that's a reality that there's going to be, you're already seeing that need where there's a lot of renovations and people are trying to upkeep their facilities and add, and we got to be cognizant of that and aware and working towards planning in the future because it doesn't happen overnight. Now I talked about that impact on players and what that means, okay? In Minnesota, unless you live in greater Minnesota, most of the metros are around 200 to 225. Other parts of the country, they're 2.5 times that, 2.5, okay? So you think about what we're paying in fees and things like that here in Minnesota, and you just go 2.5 times that on the ice, and you can see why in other parts of the country it's 10 grand to play hockey, okay? Again, there's some challenges to it, but it's worth it, okay? And the main thing is here, the way we're set up is these rinks are break even, or a lot of them are even willing, when they're city or county owned, they're willing to take a loss because there's a greater economic benefit to the community, okay? Those, the 7 private facilities and in other places of the country, they gotta make money. So not only do they can't afford to lose, but it's a business. we're trying to make some money off this thing, okay? So just have that in the back of your mind anytime you're going through that process and you're trying to persevere to get a rink built or something. It's gonna take a while, okay? But the reason that that's a good thing is because those dollars that these community groups are putting into it makes a huge, huge difference long term in your community and as a statewide model, okay? Just want to drive that point home a little bit. Now let's dive in a little bit deeper on some of these things. And we'll just, I got Bemidji up here first, so they'll go first here. But just talk a little bit about what the initial plan was. I mean, I know you guys are doing it in phases a little bit, but what was the game plan? What was the need, and how much has that changed over time?
The impetus for it starting back in the late 90s was girls hockey. Not having enough ice time, not enough indoor ice, so that was the seed to start it. It's since then changed into a lot of different things, but that was the impetus for it. And so since then, the arena, that front entry picture there is, of course, front entry, and it was built in phases. Seed money, front lobby that you're looking at there, and that's kind of a viewing area that we have upstairs. It seats, what you're looking at there, I'm gonna have to go back. What you're looking at, the reason I put that picture in there is part of the seating that we have in the arena, we actually sell to hockey parents as a fundraiser. So their names go on the back of each chair for that particular team's hockey season. And so that's prime seating. That's basically right above the players' benches and such. And so you can see the seating up there. So it's right above. Now the signage that you see in there that we have, there are about 88 advertisers in the arena that have signs going around in varying areas, and that helps to offset, is what is currently helping pay for the mortgage for our second sheet of ice. So as a business plan we've implemented, that's been able to keep us independent of all forms of government, and whether it's the school district, the county, state, or city. So we're completely free of all those problems. And as everybody else here has seen in the past, getting involved in those agencies can sometimes bring money, but it also brings a series of headaches too that can be problematic. And we identified a few years ago that we needed to be free of some of those problems, and so we completely separated from the local hockey or Bemidji Youth Hockey, because we were being pulled different directions that as a facility was very difficult to handle, and so we completely separated. It's a long drawn out affair, but nevertheless we still exist. We're joined at the hip. The Bemidji Community Media Corporation and BYH are joined at the hip. They depend on each other. So that's what that picture is intended to show, is that income source that brings about $110,000 a year in to help offset operating costs, and now helps offset our mortgage. So,
What do you charge per seat?
excuse me?
What do you charge the parents for?
Well, actually, the arena itself doesn't charge for it. It's the boys boosters, boys high school boosters that sell it, take care of it, and I believe they charge $200 a year, and then they own that seat for the high school games that are going on at that time.
Personal seat license for the high school team. That's not a bad deal.
And then the arena gets about. We didn't have the money to afford the seating for it. If you can go back a few, there's those seats right there that are in the warm viewing area upstairs. That's also sold. So we didn't have enough money to buy all the chairs and everything and all the equipment for it, so we entered an agreement with the boosters. They sell them and they give us about 40% of it, and they keep the remainder. So
Talk just real quick about the phases this project has gone through.
There were perseverance is probably the biggest word here, because the original seed money came from Mighty Ducks grant, and the building itself, the ice sheet was the first step, and then we had 7 other phases going along the way. We had phases for finishing the upstairs that you see there. We had phases for finishing the locker rooms, phases for the front entry, front lobby, and multiple phases. So we raised money, would do the next phase, raised money, do the next phase. We kept our interest costs and our cost of money down as much as it was feasible. And so when we started our second sheet of ice, we were debt-free. No problems there. So the nice thing about it is the arena has never operated in the red. It's always been in the black. Not profitable. You know, what I'm saying is we never had a shortage. It's not designed to be profitable. It's just designed to cover our bills, break even, and that's it. So it has been a long, drawn-out process, but when we put up the arena in the beginning, it was designed to be a 2-sheet facility, and so a lot of the engineering and structural processes that were done at that time were designed for that, and it cost us about $100,000 to do those extra things back in the original construction. But now that we're starting our second sheet, that money really pays off because it saved a ton of money down the road. So for us, it was very, very advantageous to have extremely involved, ridiculously involved people that had the expertise to do these types of things, construction and finance. So those are very important and still are very important.
Who was your architect? Did you seek out one architect that stayed with you throughout the project, or was
There have been 2.
2?
Yes, the original was Widseth Smith Nolting, and the one on our second project is a local guy, actually originally from Railroad, Mike Johnston. He's the architect for the second part.
Was the first one, their expertise was arenas and exhibition halls, or?
No, it wasn't.
No?
I don't know that it was their primary purpose to do that type of thing. So a lot of it was driven by what we wanted to have, and they accommodated that, as opposed to putting out some type of revolutionary design or something to that effect. Yes.
Good.
Talk about how you financed it. You're talking about your mortgage. I think the part for all of us is trying to figure out where's the money coming from. So as a private entity, how did you guys, where's the money? Was it a bank loan? Was it a city bond? That kind of, how did you guys pay for that? Where's your mortgage from?
From a local bank. It is a community-based bank in Bemidji, First National Bank, that is quite large in town. And having them as a community supporter is integral. The reason we did the construction in phases is because the property upon which the arena sits was owned by the school district. And so a bank could not take out a typical mortgage because of that problem. And also, even if they could have taken out a typical mortgage and we would have failed, it wouldn't have been a great thing for a bank to take over a hockey arena and kick kids out. It would have been a public relations nightmare. So our mortgages have been short term. On all these phases, they've been 1 year to 7 years. So we clear out that debt, and then we take on another project. Now, with our current project, we're not doing it in phases because the people that are driving it are running out of time. I mean, they can't keep doing it forever, so we have a longer term mortgage that's in place now. Right now is about 15 years. So that's how it has been done. We haven't had assistance from, well, when the project is done, the value of the building will be, of government money, whether it's state, county, or whatever, will amount to about 2% of the value of the project. Otherwise, all the other monies come from local foundations, businesses, and supporters.
Awesome. And we'll come back and dive into some of that a little bit more. Now, Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about you guys' project?
So this is just one of the original renderings, and this is what it ended up. Well, it's further, not an original rendering, but what we had our arena and now 2 sheets are on our high school campus. So the first rink we opened in 2001 with the same model. So the way the school district operates, if your sports want facilities, you can buy them. So the Youth Association opened and built this first arena in 2001, like I said, entirely with private money. So the Youth Association owned and operated it on a piece of land that the school district owned. So we have a complicated agreement with that, but it's worked over time. So what you could, this is the second rink. On the far left of that main picture, you can see where the original building begins. The original agreement and the agreement that was in place for rink 1 is that we would take out a loan and pay for it over 20 years. When it was paid off, we would turn it over to the school district. So we're in essence making a huge gift to the school. They had use of it. They were able to program the space during the day and actually rented the space from us. And then they came to us after about 12 years and said they wanted to have a discussion about would we consider turning the building over early. And that started the discussion for rink 2. We already knew we needed it. We said yes, if it's a win for us and them, we'll talk about it. So what that did, it was important for us to maintain the operating agreement because we wanted to know we had first and only say in the ice. And then part of the request that went in and made the deal happen is we said we want the land behind the building set aside for future potential use of a rink. They weren't committing to anything, but we kind of had the first right of refusal. We knew the land was unusable for anything else. So you can't begin, well, you get a little bit of the grass. So if you look at the football field is a long ways below our building. In the field where you can see the green behind is our wall on the back that's maybe 8 feet tall. And we're way below. So we built this thing into a massive hill, which is part of our construction cost, part of everything. We also knew going in, we didn't have a bunch of land. We couldn't go buy land. We couldn't put in another parking lot. We couldn't afford to have a second staff. And there were a lot of things driving it. What I'll tell you about Minnetonka hockey is we are Minnetonka in name only. We are Excelsior, Chanhassen, Eden Prairie, Deep Haven, Shorewood, Tonka Bay. The fewest number of our players come from the city of Minnetonka. So, because that's just the way that the geographic boundaries are laid out, the bulk of the city of Minnetonka is actually Hopkins School District, which became, and we knew would be an enormous hurdle for us. There's a lot of animosity, there's a lot of, and I heard it in school board, or in city council meetings, why are you recruiting Hopkins kids? And I said, well, part of the reason I'm here is to build a rink because we don't have enough ice. The last thing I want is more. Right now, I need ice, not kids. And we are still growing. Our program is growing, so we could demonstrate that. But it was a really complicated arrangement. It took us probably a year plus just to get to our own school board. And I always said my final slide of my presentations should always be I'm asking for exactly $0. The school board was going to give us no money. We had no tax, state, local, or other government dollars. It was all entirely privately funded. And going into it, we knew the school board, their number one requirement on us is we had to raise half the money to start. So we had to come up with $4.5 million to even kick off our project. We had complicated bank relationships too. We had worked with Venture Bank, who's now Choice Financial. They knew the situation. The only thing I would add to the building a rink on a high school campus is, one, there was very little risk for them. We'd proven we could pay for it. We'd done it before. We're putting down half the money. And oh, by the way, if we would default, it's sitting on a high school campus, which it's not like Walmart's going to move in, right? So they did have the security of knowing it was on a school campus and the school would figure something out. It would be bad, but there wasn't, some of those other issues that came into it. But we worked through the entire process and then taking it to, once we got through the school board, we took it to the city, and then we had a whole different layer of conflict. So there's long and storied history between the city of Minnetonka and the Minnetonka School District. And we are an association without a home. We don't have a city that supports us. We don't have a city that provides rinks. We are, within our area and where we skate are Minnetonka rinks A and B. Those are owned by the city of Minnetonka. That ice is sold. We have less than an equivalent of one sheet of ice from 2 buildings. So they sell their ice to community programs for the city of Minnetonka. They have figure skating, open skating, the community asset piece. And then they sell ice to us, to Minnetonka Youth Hockey and Hopkins Youth Hockey, proportionate to the size of our program. So whatever's left, we get a proportionate amount, right? So every year we can chip away at a couple hours if their numbers go down and ours go up and vice versa. But but it is, we know we had about 900 hours. We count on about 1,100 is what we'd call a full-time sheet. We were skating in Victoria, and we counted 10 rinks we used regularly, including Mariucci, Hat Trick, Velocity, Victoria A and B, or East and West. And it was just obvious that we couldn't sustain a program on what we had. And so our hand was forced, but we knew, what the challenges would be. So that's kind of how the whole program started. This was built on, this is an inside look. Another one of the hurdles we had to go through was we had to call it a practice facility. Because we were building it on a high school campus, we couldn't call it a game rink, because when you start to talk about city codes and everything else around it, a game rink equates to a couple hundred people watching, which means more bathrooms, which means we needed to add 300 parking spaces. And all these things that we didn't, if you're familiar at all with Minnetonka High School, it's one of the largest high schools in the state built on a postage stamp. There is no room to expand. There's no room. It's a 40-acre campus for that school. This is the last buildable piece of land. So there was a lot of working through the school, working through the city to get those plans done. So we couldn't represent any seating. We couldn't call it a training room. It had to be a community, or it couldn't be a community room. It had to be a training room. And it's just all these things. We have a mezzanine layer space that runs down the right side. You can just see the rail that's viewing. It is truly a practice rink, but if you look at the M on the back wall, the very top of that M is the ground level up above. So we're buried into this huge hill, and it was a lot of the angst, issues, and dollars went into pouring concrete that we'd never see to hold up that hill, right? So it was an interesting arrangement and a long, drawn-out process from what we had, and at the end of the day, we had to come up, like I said, the biggest hurdle for us was coming up with the money to start. So, and it's entirely privately funded through our membership and local sponsors and companies that were involved. Yes?
You said that you're operating it, you're ongoing operating this well.
Yep.
That done under a separate board or a separate LLC or?
No, when we originally built the first rink, we did have a separate group that ran it. We didn't do that the second time. What we have, so currently the way the structure is, we turned over the rink one to the school. We still operate it. So it's our employees, the Youth Association employees operating it. One of the complicating factors for us is we were building a rink that we owned, physically attached to a building we didn't, sitting on land we didn't own. So we had this whole complicated arrangement that for a while it looked like we literally had to have a wall, a gap between, and a pass that there would be air. So that was another, so now we own the rink, operate the second one, and sitting on the school campus, right? So it was one of those where we said, previously we had someone that could manage the finances, a whole separate board, and we have a hard enough time just getting the 14 to be on our original board. And I can't imagine trying to, it would be great, but haven't been able to recruit a second board to run it.
Some arenas that are operating on or located on school land are operating under the school district as well. I think that's another structure that's out there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one's better, but they hire the employees as part of their maintenance staff that basically runs it.
Yeah, and we had a lot of debate. We had a very strong opinion about who should operate it, and partly we needed to know that we had first say and priority in all scheduling. So even now, our second rink, we sell hours to the high school, but we are not obligated to. Any hours they use in our rink, they have to buy. And when you bring in the school district one, there was a change in the quality of upkeep. They have a lot of buildings and a lot of space to keep clean. Our expectations for what we expected the building to look at were different, and our costs were very different. We're able to operate outside of what the school district, as a central government entity, has to do. It's a union issue, for one.
Sounds like we're twins in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
It's the exact same thing.
Yeah. And we needed our people doing the work to make sure it was done right.
Awesome. Chris, you want to share a little bit more about St. Luke's?
Yeah, our project kind of started this 8 years ago. I don't know if anybody had been up to Proctor's old rink, but it was in dire need of not being a hockey rink anymore. We had several high school games where we had referees tell us, that, you guys gotta get this thing shored up or it's not fit to play hockey anymore. We had ratchet straps that held together our boards and glass, so it was time. At the time I was the president of the Hockey Association. The association didn't own that building, but we leased that building from the County Fair Board Association. And then we in turn leased it to the high school, so it was kind of a unique situation. So I went to a school board meeting and kind of discussed what our issues were and the need that we're gonna continue to have a high school program for one. I suppose a youth program, we could survive as an outdoor program, probably wouldn't be a great thing for retaining kids and for our high school program. So that's the way I approached it, and I formed an arena committee that initially looked at what we were gonna do. I went to city leaders and got key city leaders on it, school people, and then hockey people. And it was a long, drawn-out process. We went from everywhere to trying to find private money. As an association, we bounce anywhere from 120 to 150 players. Unless we have a Ralph Engelstedt in that group, we're probably not going to come up with enough money out of that group to build an arena. So we looked at partnering with the city and doing some state bonding. We presented at legislature one time. Quickly found out that it probably wasn't going to be the way we were going to be able to get it done. We just worked several different, we really worked hard to find some private money, because in my mind the whole time I thought, if this is going to work, I think it's going to have to be kind of a school referendum. It was kind of my thought in my mind. The school people didn't really want to go down that road, because I mean, if you saw the slide, there's not a whole lot of school districts that own or operate arenas. What was it, like 18 or something you had up on your slide there?
Fairly small, yeah.
It's small. I mean, in general, schools really don't want to own the arenas. But because we had partnered, I mean, we're kind of in it together, the association and the school. Our association directly feeds the one high school program we have. So it was with that partnership, it was kind of came to a conclusion that it's the only way we're going to get it done. So once we determined that, and like I said, I became a school board member, I think a month before the referendum. A lot of people say became a school board member because of this. I really didn't. We really kind of had this nailed by the time. I mean, obviously we had to get the vote, but I really wasn't that concerned about that part. As it turns out, I'm sure glad I became a school board member because of this, because it was very helpful in some of the stuff that we did with the arena, and having a hockey person in that position was helpful. But we had a huge need for a rink. For us to sell it to our school district and to our voters, we had huge health and safety concerns at the old building. But athletic referendums they're tough. They're really tough. They generally don't pass their first time through. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times, and unfortunately each time, you take something out of it. So we went with that approach. You can see we've got a field, a football field and a baseball field in there. We had a natural grass facility that we decided that we were going to try and throw that in there, because we had to throw more than hockey into it. It was never going to pass without just hockey.
We had to do the same thing.
Yeah, so this way we bring in baseball, we bring in football. I mean, everybody that would use that field, we hopefully can get on our side. And I think it was a key component. Leading up, we had lots of, the school did a great job, our superintendent did an excellent job with the social media part and getting the word out. We went door knocking for the last month leading up to the vote, but the kids did it. And the kids, it was a huge, huge impact. There were people that told me that I was like, no. I mean, I just didn't, people didn't want to, we have an older community, that people didn't want to pay the taxes, and they said when they saw the kids that was like, I can't say no now. So it was a long, long process. There was times where, in those 8 years, where it's like I always thought we'd get it done, but there was times I had no idea when we would get it done. 8 years is a long time. There was two constants, myself and a guy at the school level were kind of the guys that were constants that were there all the time. We kind of maybe take a break for a little while and brainstorm, but now it's the school that runs the building, and the youth association leases from the school, so that part kind of flipped. So there's been some challenges there, but it's been a good partnership.
Good. What's your population of Proctor?
It's about 3,000. Our school district boundaries go outside of Proctor though, so I should know.
How close is the vote?
Probably like 80. We wanted by, we just didn't make it by a little, but it wasn't by a ton either. As we watched the vote come in, we have different voting locations. It wasn't until the last one came in, and I still tell my superintendent, I think he did that on purpose, because we were kind of all watching at the edge of our seat as it came in. So, yeah, it was, like I said, we had a real need. We couldn't continue in that building. The building that we were on was basically built on a swamp. It was basically a horse arena. It wasn't built to be a hockey arena. So back in the early 70s, they put, boards in there, which were wood boards, and we had metal fencing, no artificial ice. Actually, the first year I played hockey was the first year the building opened, so I came in on that end. When I was in high school, we got our first artificial ice plant, real dasher boards. Zamboni came a little bit before that, but I can remember growing up, we kind of did it wasn't an every period thing, it was kind of in halves because you didn't have time. But the dads had to come out, sweep the ice off, and then you'd pull the barrel around to flood it, and then you would have to wait for the fog to clear before you could start the game again, so.
Different world we live in, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's,
cool. All right, in the interest of time, we'll come back a little bit, but Steve, let's talk a little bit about STMA Arena and just a little bit more of the details in the backstory and some of the challenges you guys faced.
Well, backstory kind of goes, that's just the artist rendering, and it actually turned out to look very, very, very much like that. It's interesting in the sense that the original sheet is the one kind of on the left. You see the school buses there, and that would be the kind of the representation of that. That original building, St. Michael Youth Hockey, got that building up and running in the early 90s. Talk about a building that was not intended for hockey. That building was actually, the metal structure part of that was acquired by the Youth Hockey Association roughly 5-6 years prior to it being built. It was a used metal building that they found somehow, somewhere, and stored it literally in a barn in St. Joe. Until which time they had enough money raised to build, they actually put it up. Ultimately what happened was the land that is sitting on was donated by a family in the community who happened to have kids playing hockey, who also happens to be the family that owns the bus company. And so they're that is literally across the street from the bus company. So the original piece of land was donated, so they got that part done. So fast forward real quick, in the interest of time, they finally got the cities to kind of go along and put a little money into it to basically do the concrete work, electrical, but it was all built by volunteers. It was literally being painted hours before the first game. Fast forward a number of years, now you're talking maybe just real quickly into the late 90s when St. Michael-Albertville was a 4-way stop sign and one Catholic church in St. Michael. I mean, it was nothing. It was just, you pass it up on I-94. That's roughly 27 years ago. Next thing you know, the damn housing boom goes. And what happened to St. Michael-Albertville? That town exploded overnight.
I moved out there.
Yeah, as did I. As did I. So, long short of that, I grew up in the St. Cloud area. My son graduated out of St. Michael-Albertville 6 years ago with more kids in his graduating class than I did out of St. Cloud Apollo. That's how fast this damn thing grew. Problem with that is, with every house that goes up, you're going to know you're going to get hockey players. If your population's growing, you can figure anywhere between 5 and 10% growth in that is going to turn into hockey players. It just became a math problem. So the point is, when we were sitting on one sheet of ice as the president of the Youth Hockey Association, and we're battling because the high school team is using it, the youth hockey is using it, there's not enough hours for either one of them. It got to the point where I'm sitting in the Albertville City Hall, and we're arguing about the high school wants to take more ice time, but that would mean at the expense of youth hockey. It got so heated that the city attorney got in between me and the high school coach. And I'm the president, and he's the high school coach, that settle down, guys. I'm like, you can't rob from Peter to pay Paul. You're never going to have a hockey program if you keep doing that. So that's where the beginning of it comes. You go to the cities, well, can you bond it? Can you build it? No, we don't want to build it. Here's the problem. St. Michael has most of the kids. It's in Albertville. We're not spending money, our tax dollars, raising taxes in St. Michael to put something that's built in Albertville. Albertville is thinking, well, why would we do that? As soon as we do this, St. Michael's going to go say, hell, we'll build our own rink because we got all the kids. And the school district said, we're poor. Fast forward real quick. School's still poor, but we're growing so dang fast, the school district has to grow. They have to build schools, buildings. Talking about referendums that failed. The first referendum came out to build new schools in this community. I mean, they're talking about a lot of new schools. With that new school and the brand new high school that came, they put a field house on it. At that point, though, to get the field house, part of that on the vote is buildings, field house, and over here was the ice arena. So in essence, what they did to the youth hockey at that point was, we were the part that you have to give a community something to say no to. School districts don't get everything they want. Communities want to say no to something. The youth hockey side, the hockey rink at that point was the one part that didn't get voted in. They further made it worse that if you didn't vote, if you left it blank, it was a no vote. It was set up to fail. Fine. Disappointing, fine. All that get out the vote stuff, everything, kept working on it. Ultimately, we went back to them and said, sell it to the Youth Hockey Association. We'll buy it. If you don't want it, it's not on your land, it's not attached to the school. City, sell it to us. We can't. Why not? This is where the Mighty Ducks money gets to be a little bit tricky. If you take that money, you can't sell it. It always has to operate as an ice arena, with one exception, if it goes bankrupt. That's the only way you get out of that Mighty Ducks grant money. Has to bankrupt. So I said, well, you keep claiming you're not making money on your rent, you're losing money, so claim you're bankrupt, and we'll do a prepackaged bankruptcy, we'll buy it from a buck, and we'll start building. Because in the meantime, we also had that same bus company donate land next to it. So we had the land already secured for the second sheet. That didn't go through. They didn't like that. Cities didn't want to do that either. I said, fine, we can get with bond financing. You want to issue a bond, a municipal bond. Use your joint powers authority, much like your water and sewer, you can issue a municipal bond. Had that all set up for them. All you have to do is just sign off on it. It can be built. $3 million, it's done, and it'll get used every hour it gets used. Youth hockey will pay for by every hour available. At that point, they said, well, youth hockey, you don't need all of them. I said, no, we don't. Well, what are you going to do with them? I said, we'll sell them. Rogers needs it. Monticello still needed it. The communities around us need it. Well, would you sell it for more or less than you paid for it? I said, but what's the difference to you? We're taking a risk. So you can make money on it? Yeah, maybe, conceivably. Then no. So we got beat up again on that. You go fast forward again, said, all right, fine, if you're not going to bond it, we have a bank that'll finance it. A little community bank, they'll finance this thing. All you have to do is, the three entities, is sign off that in the event that there is going to be any operational shortfall, the cities will cover it somehow. We knew full well just by doing the feasibility studies, the numbers, the accounting of it all, there wasn't going to be any. All you have to do is sign your names off as communities. And the bank will do it right now. Nope. Answer is no. You keep going, you got to keep tricking it, until what happens is, as a youth hockey, we started talking, all right, well, we need to get people on our side on these school boards and city councils. So at the point, we started literally making, to an extent, a PAC, the Political Action Committee. You start interviewing the people who are running for these community seats, these city council seats, and these school boards. Are you a friend of hockey? Are you not? If you are, we'd be more than happy to endorse you. Because in smaller communities like that, another 500 votes, you get a guy or gal elected. To an extent, that worked a little bit. Finally, the schools continue to grow, and I'm just really quickly abbreviating. Finally, we have to get to the point where now they need to go back to the cities again to expand their athletic facilities and the schools once again. In the meantime, and fortunately, in our community out there, the superintendent changed as well. Stars aligned for us. Anne Marie Foucault is a fantastic lady whose husband happens to be the assistant coach on the varsity team. She's a hockey lady. She got it. So they acquired, much like we did down in Proctor, they lumped that, the new ice arena, with the new football field, with the new tennis courts, with the new expansion they had to add on to the high school already. So and a dome, that's right. And we got a dome. So all of that got put into one. No one got separated out. So ultimately it worked on a community, even though youth hockey was very strong in getting out to vote and pushing that knocking on doors, let's do this. Everyone got something in that community this time, so finally it worked. The shame of it is, if they would have done it as community leaders, they failed the community. When we first started, it was a $3 million project. It's done as a $10 million project, and I will still argue to them, were you great stewards of our community? You cost us over 3.5 times. And all that time of not having the thing. It took so long to get it done that quite literally they don't need a second sheet in STMA, they need a third. That's the problem. And they can't build on to where they are now. So they're lost.
Rolling through a few photos of that, and that's awesome, Steve. Thank you. We only have about 10 minutes left. I want to do some hyper speed answers on a couple of things. Dale, you wanted to add something?
I was just going to say, I'm betting that most people here are wondering, how do you get this going? How do you get it started? What do you do to get it started? I'm guessing that's probably one of the biggest questions that's out there.
Because they're talking about that tipping point, right? So there's faith, belief, there's vision, but there's also that Daddy Warbucks is not going to suddenly rear his head and say, you know what, $2 million on me, you go get the rest, right? That's that piece. So if you guys can talk about how you tipped either that first sponsor or that first person over, and I don't mean for the first $100, I mean like anybody that...
For us, our original sheet of ice,